Hey everybody, Bad as the Fish 80 here. Welcome back to the Fish Tank. As always, powered by Sneak Energy. Use code FISH if you wish at sneakenergy.com. Get yourself some sugar-free, low-calorie energy drink. Okay, well, welcome to the video today. I am joined by DefShoot. Welcome, DefShoot.
Thank you. Yep, that's me. Always here with these patch notes videos with fish.
Yep, that's right. We're going to be going through a patch note video today. This is going to be for patch 1.29. That's going to be dropping on Thursday. Now that date is Thursday the 21st of October. So we're going to go through the patch notes now and show you what new content and balance changes we're going to be seeing in the next patch. Okay, so let's bring this up here on the screen and then we can start going through it. Okay, so as mentioned, this is version 1.29. So we're going to have two new cards. We're going to have a new legendary skin. We're going to have balance changes. And we're going to have some bug fixes. Lovely. Okay, let's dive right in to the new cards that we're going to be seeing on Thursday. And the first of these is Kurnath Crystalback. Welcome everybody to Kurnath Crystalback. Let's find out more about this guy. Or girl. Okay, so this is going to be a 4 mana legendary Voidborn minion. Now, it's got the same HP as a warrior or the new bear. DPS is 22.8, so lower than specifically the warrior for sure. Now, this does have an interesting additional mechanic though. This is an anti-spell card. So the first 2 times an opponent plays a spell, this is going to deal 200 damage to the closest 3 enemy minions. And there is no radius on that effect. Whichever 3 enemy minions are closest are going to take 100 damage. So that's the first 2 times an opponent plays a spell. DefShoot, how do you feel about this card? Specifically with its anti-spell effect.
As a base unit, it's gonna have some nice tank ability, because with a lot of techie cards like these, we have the special ability, they often can't hold their ground. But this guy does have decent stats for a 4 mana minion, and as for his ability, it's one of those things where you're gonna want to use it where it's either gonna benefit you or really halt your enemy, your opponent. Because you can do it when your opponent really got a good spell target, or more of the same thing, but on your side of the coin, you could do it where you're playing something that will be a good spell target, and so then that's why you play it. It's also going to be very good versus Meluine and Setsu because they're spellmasters. So I think that as a base minion, it can see play even if it doesn't get off its ability all the time.
One of the interesting things about this is it's the opponent playing the spell, which is something that we've seen before with the old Xiaolong, but then that got changed with the new Xiaolong and the Jinlong, where it was any spell. Do you think this is healthier now that this is only based on the opponent playing a spell rather than something you can trigger yourself?
Yeah, it'd definitely be too strong if you could trigger it yourself, because then on certain masters, like I think Morelia and Meluine are the ones that have free spells instead of abilities for their perks. You could play it on them and then have an instant activation for basically no cost. So when it's only the opponent's spell, you can't do it to take out something really critical. Like you could take out Stixie instantly with this thing if you did it correctly. You need both activations, of course, or you could just take out like an infiltration basically instantly. Only one Marine would survive. And since only the opponent activates it, that means that it's based on what they do and whether or not it happens. So it's like you're the one playing the card, but they basically decide whether or not it activates or not. So it's a big value decision for both players.
And this is what the Kurnath Crystalback will look like in game. So it's similar to the Swarmers and other units along that kind of design philosophy. Okay, so that's the first card. The second card we have is the Sapphire Pebble. Looks like a cute little chap. Let's find out more about the Sapphire Pebble. Now, we've got a new keyword to explore here as well. Okay, so let's just go through this. So this is a 2 mana Zenshi building. It's got 100 health, does 25 DPS, lasts for 15 seconds. Fairly simple, but the new keyword we have here is Myriad. Now, Myriad, when you draw it, you add 2 extra copies. This, if you see on the description here, it says Myriad 2. So when you draw the Sapphire Pebble, so that's when it enters your 4-card hand, it will add 2 additional single-use copies of this card to your deck. Now, importantly, those additional copies are not, they do not have the Myriad keyword, so they're not going to spiral out of control. So basically, when you draw it into your hand, you get some extra copies in your deck. And why is that important? Well, when you play this, you increase the cost of it by 1, but you play every other copy of the Sapphire Pebble in your hand. So this is a 2-mana card, but if you have 2 in your hand, you will play both of them for 3 mana. If you have all 3 in your hand, you will play all 3 of them for 4 mana. And the thing to remember is these are buildings, so they can't spawn on the same place, but they will spawn based on where you decide to play it, and then they will be placed, the additional copies, if you have them, will be placed around the original based on how the building's placement allows. How do you feel about this card and the new Myriad keyword, DefShoot?
It is quite vulnerable in HP. I think I see it being better in 1v1 than 2v2, because in 2v2 it might get overwhelmed a lot easier because it's a way more chaotic field. But in 1v1, I see it easily being played in the middle, right next to both bridges. Because with a range of 12, it can practically reach across both sides of the bridge. For example, Laser Turret has 11 range, it can almost do it. This thing has 12 range, which is even better than that. But against Stormbringer, for example, I think it'd be pretty bad because it only has 100 HP, so it would Stormbringer would practically melt it with his basic attack after having perk 1. But with 12 range, unlike a lot of buildings, you won't be able to outrange it with something like Crystal Archers or Lone Archer or Aimbot or just marksmanship from Stormbringer. So it will be very easy to get value from this card before it dies. And for just 2 mana, I think it will be a very solid control card.
Now, I'm sure what a lot of people are thinking when they see this 2-mana building, multiple 2-mana buildings, is they start freaking out about, oh my god, people are going to use Call to Arms and get 1,000,000 warriors. Well, stay tuned, because Call to Arms is getting changed, and we'll discuss that in just a little bit. But let's just finish off our Sapphire Pebble here. This is what the Sapphire Pebble looks like in game. So we'll see exactly what that looks like when we get to play it on Thursday, see what its attacks look like, and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so that's the 2 new cards. We've got the Kurnoth Crystalback and the Sapphire Pebble. Now, as always, we have a new skin coming in the Battle Pass. This is the Dragon Bone Valorian. Now, the astute among you will notice that this is another recolored skin, but it's a good-looking recolored skin, DefShoot.
Yeah, I think that the wings are very nice looking. They have a lot of detail to them. And the general color scheme of the skin, I think, is very nice. It looks very evil, which I really like for Valorian because he's supposed to be the hero of light. So it's nice to see sort of an opposite on that for one of his skins.
Okay, so there's the 2 new cards and the new skin. But, of course, with each patch comes a raft of balance changes. And now we're going to go through them. So, the first thing that we're going to see that's going to be changed is that all Masters attacks are now going to be classed as special. So that means previously they were all classed as ranged. Even Ravager, which was a little bit confusing because Ravager with his arms was basically looking like a melee attacker. But all Masters attacks were ranged. They're now going to be special. Something like a Boomer has a special attack type. Why is that important? Well, there's some interactions the developers didn't like between some cards and units based on the fact the Masters were ranged. So things like Sugarlight Shield protecting from Master damage, that will no longer be the case because the damage is special and not ranged. The Bear was taking forever to die, and we'll see why that happens with the next change to Master attacks. The Incubus jump into face, that's not going to happen anymore. And again, we'll see very quickly after this, we'll see a change that's going to affect Ardera and the Divine Shield stacking on face. So the second change to Master's attacks, they're going to be true damage. Deadshot, how do you feel about the Master attacks being classed as special and being true damage now?
I think that it really hurts Circlite Shield because it was the main uses for Circlite Shield is when you have a push its nearing face. Of course, you can use it versus just general range minions that the opponent plays, but the most reliable play is that you'll be able to stop master attacks with it, which is very good for about a lot of masters of high DPS attacks. Not all of them, of course. And it's nice to see that they're fixing this with the Stout Heart Bear because, especially versus Ravager it basically wouldn't take any damage because Ravagers are about those really fast low damage attacks, and that's basically what all master attacks are, like Mellowing, Rappo, Morelia. So now they don't just get to just hit the bear forever when it doesn't die. I think it's a very healthy change. Same thing with the Ardera change, and yeah, Stormbringer of course is a very interesting one because Stormbringer can hit across the entire field after perk 1.
Okay, so the devs have said, as I mentioned, there is a number of different interactions that they didn't like, and this will change that. Based on how those interactions feel after this change, we may see some buffs to the cards, especially as DefShoot said there with the Suggerlite Shield, since this will be removing quite a big use case of that card. Okay.
I also just thought of one more thing
sure.
to add. It's important to note that this does not work for on-field Setsu or Rect. They're not going to have true damage when they're on the field. It's only something that affects masters when they are on the master tower. So this is not a major buff to on-field Rect or on-field Setsu.
Okay, good to know. Good clarification. Good work. Okay, now, based on those changes, the developers have decided that Stormbringer was going to be a little bit too strong with the... basically because it will now have true damage, so this is effectively reversing a previous buff, so its attack cooldown is going up slightly from 3.8 seconds to 4 seconds. And then another change to a master, King Puff, as we've seen in the last season, King Puff is very strong, especially at perk 3, so his birthday is now going to be every 40 seconds up to every 50 seconds, so that means you're going to be able to get your buffs and the trick swap less often, so that's going to be a nerf, but they've also buffed it slightly, so remember you can reduce the cooldown to the next birthday by playing certain mana cards. Previously that was 4 to 6 mana cards, that's going to be increased from 4 to 7 mana cards to give you a little bit extra leeway when considering what cards to include in your deck. A healthy change, do you feel, DefShoot?
Yeah, King Puff I think is insane in 1v1. Now, I still am worried about perk 2 and 3, because I would like to see perk 2 get a better radius, similar to Valko's perk Flame Ember radius, but smaller. And perk 3 is still an absolute powerhouse of a perk. But it's nice to see the King's birthday doesn't come around as often. Yeah, it's just solid buff. The 7 mana barrier now being added to the 4 to 6 mana for reducing the cost. Not a major thing in my opinion, because you usually don't want to get that expensive on King Puff. But I am glad to see him get a nerf, because I do think that he was the strongest 1v1 master in the game, Rekt being close. So overall, I'd say it's a nerf and a good one.
Okay, so that's some master changes. Now we're going to go on to changes to some cards. Now, this is an interesting one. A lot of people have always had a problem with the way that the Guardian worked. Now this is going to be quite a big change. So instead of the Guardian protecting 100% of damage from a unit that it's under its protection, it will only protect 75% of that. So for example, if you have a unit protected by the Guardian and it takes 100 damage, it will take 25 of that damage itself, and 75 of that damage will be passed on to the Guardian. So there are some certain interactions that this is going to impact. So with these smaller Crystal Elf units, they will not be able to survive things like a fireball that crushes everything, because the 45 damage, which is the 25% of the 180, that will kill them. That will go through the Guardian shield and kill them. But conversely, if you've got a Guardian protecting more HP based crystal units, this could potentially give it somewhat of an increased survivability, because instead of the Guardian taking all the damage and then ultimately dying, that damage will be spread out a little bit between the units. How do you feel about this change, DefShoot, to the Guardian?
I think that it's a pretty solid nerf to Arcanist and Crystal Archers, the really cheap ones you protect with Guardian. But I do see healing being combined with Guardian more now than it used to be, because you'll now be able to spread out the damage naturally when using Guardian on Crystal units, So Clear Skies is the most, I think, common example or most usable. You could now play that with Guardian pushes, and it would heal up all your minions, including your Guardian. So it might make that push more dangerous, but we'll see. We'll see. I think that it is overall better for weaker crystal minions, but has dangerous potential with the healthier ones.
Okay. Right, so be interesting to see. Let us know in the comments what you feel about this, because I know a lot of people have always had issues with the way Guardian worked, and this is going to be a change, and it'll be interesting to see what you think, and also interesting to see how this plays out in the new patch. So watch this space. Right, now let's whiz through some changes here. So the Haunting Hugger, its attack delay is going to be increased, but it is going to be given a bit more damage. Now the developers felt that it was just farming a Cursed Ascension credit just a little bit too fast, so they've nerfed that a little bit, but they've buffed the damage it can do. So not really going to be able to kill too much more, but every little helps. Now we have the Chizma Boomstick. So the Chizma Boomstick, if you're familiar with how it worked, or if you're not familiar with how it worked, it used to fear itself if it didn't have the Scrat Horde buff. Scrat Swarm, sorry. Where it would run straight back to your Master Tower, which was fairly problematic sometimes because it just kept keeping it out of danger. So they've changed that, so depending on what it's attacking, it will veer away from that target. So if it attacks something between itself and your own tower, it will then run away from your tower. So that's probably an overall nerf, and the explosion radius is going to be increased a little bit from 4 to 5. Do you feel like this is going to see Chizma being played more often, DevShoot?
I still think that one of his biggest issue is the fact that it's hard to get a substantial quantity of damage on one unit. Like, his attack is so spread out that it's hard to get really good value. I don't think it'll increase his play that much, but I think that it is a healthy change, and the explosion radius might have some surprising interaction changes when you're using the card.
Okay, as we mentioned earlier, with the introduction of the new cheap building, Call to Arms could become problematic. Well, the developers have thought of that, and they had some changes. So Call to Arms now, it's going to be only a 4 mana spell. So instead of 6 as it was previously, it's going to be 4 mana. So what that will give you is 1 warrior at your tower, so that's 3 mana value, and then based on the HP of the building, it will give you a particular unit. So if the building has 100 or less HP, Spear Thrower. 200 or less, Legionnaire. 201 or more, it will give you a warrior. So how do you feel about these changes, DevShoot, considering the new the Zenshi building that we were talking about, the Sapphire Pebble?
I think that it's a very good change overall, because I think it gives the devs a lot more breathing room, because this is one of those cards that you had to always consider whenever doing anything with buildings, whenever creating them, whenever changing their stats, balance changes. But what I don't like about this change is I think it is hard on players, because you really have to know stats, like what a building has as its base HP, how much damage it's taken, how quickly it fades away with entropy. So it's going to be a bit difficult, in my opinion, to know what type of unit you're going to get, which is pretty important. But I think that players will learn it, and I think that as a base cost of 4, you're getting 3 mana already, so it might be really good, and it might just be playable.
Nice, good to see. Okay, next up is the Gorax Gates. Remember, this gives you a random. It gives you either a Cleaver, it gives you 2 Dragon Whelps, or previously 7 Swarmers. Importantly, with Blood Pact. And what the developers have said is that the 7 Swarmers, because they have Blood Pact, was such a potential negative, because they could just get spelled or colossed, or just something like that would do huge damage to your face. So what they've changed now is that instead of getting the 7 Swarmers, you get 3 Elite Swarmers. So 3 decently tanky units, and 3 units as opposed to 7. So less terror from the Blood Pact. And as we'll see with some of the other cards as well, it's now going to start and give you, the first thing you get from it is going to be random, but then it will cycle through the options one after the other. Is this a change that you like, DevShoot?
Yeah, I mean, the Swarmers were really good. Like, you could play them on a minion and it would shred them. They could really shred minions, but the danger potential was too high. You basically never wanted to get Swarmers, because it would backfire so much if the opponent capitalized on it. the 3 Elite Swarmers is a very tanky option now. So I think that you could really make a lot happen with that.
Good. We'll see how that pans out. Now, again, Slithering Summons gets a similar change where it's going to cycle through the options in a set order after a random starting point, and the same with Raging Reinforcements. So you don't have to get punished by getting bad RNG back to back to back anymore. Now, next up is Border Patrol. So Border Patrol was a little bit confusing with how it worked and the mana freeze and all that stuff. So they've removed the additional mana freeze that you get if they spawn with a shield. So remember, they spawn with a shield if you have only Crystal Elf units under your control. So now their activated state will come with the benefit of the shield, and it will not come at any extra cost. So I think overall that's something that may see this card played more often, and hopefully just make it a little bit easier to understand as well. Now we have the Zeppelin Bomber. So the Zeppelin Bomber is now going to be given Scrat Swarm. So Scrat Swarm it's something that if you have 3 Scrats in the opponent arena, something happens. In this case, it gains haste. Now that means it's going to move more quickly and it will bomb more often. How do you feel about this change, DefShoot? Are we going to see more Zeppelin Bomber in the meta?
Well, I don't think so, because I think that the AoE options are still better than Zeppelin Bomber. I think that you would still rather have, when it comes to pure deck strength, I would still rather have Whirly Scrat or Grenadier. I think that this card is now more usable if you want to play a less tryhard deck, like for general deck building, not like going for the best deck possible, but going for usability. I could definitely see Zeppelin Bomber being stronger now. I already had it in a few decks that I played for fun, so I think that it is playable, but definitely not on the top of the card choosing chain.
This is one of those cards that suffers quite a lot from the fact that air units can't take bridges. You know, previously, at least it was like, well, at least I get a bridge, anything else is a bonus. Now, you don't even get that. So we'll see if that additional Scrat Swarm does help it perform better. Now, again, another underperforming card. Like, how often do you see Empowered Soul Stealer? Almost never. You might see it a little bit less now. It's going to start with 4 stacks instead of 3. So just a little bit of a buff there. Trying to bring that card back into the meta, but that's not something we see very often. Now a few more changes to go through here. We've got the Demon Warrior. So the Demon Warrior, they're not changing anything about the card at all. They're just the fact it's removed from the random card pool. So you'll no longer get a Demon Warrior from some futures or from a blind date. Now, I think overall that's probably a buff to the futures and the blind date. Blind date, just giving you a random Demon Warrior, the chances are you're not going to get 6 of them over the course of a game, so you were basically getting an underpowered unit from your blind date. The futures, you could argue that removing it from the futures could be a nerf. I think future past, it's probably not a nerf because you don't really want it from the future past. The future present maybe, because of the fact that future present tends to be played in a cheap deck. So if you get the Demon Warrior, it can still benefit from the cheap deck. But I feel like overall, these are good changes. It just feels like a strange card, especially getting it from the blind date. And that's something that also is going to be given to Shield Capped Innovator. The fact these cards have these quest-esque mechanics makes sense to not get them randomly. And a slight change with Shield Capped Innovator. It's not really a nerf, because this isn't a card that you really would wildcard. They've just reduced the copies allowed from 3 to 1 just to make it more obvious. Because people, when these quests come up, people might think, well, you know what? Let me just play 3 copies of them, get that quest done super fast. Same with Demon Warrior. Let's just play a bunch of them, get that 6th Demon Warrior out as quickly as possible. But of course, that's not how it works. Each card has its own progress. So this is more of a quality of life change. Right, next up is Stormy. Stormy's just getting a slight health increase. So remember, Stormy damages itself when it attacks. It does 100 damage, same as Chain Lightning. So this is not going to change the number of hits it can get off, but it's just going to give it a bit of extra barrier to get that second hit off. So maybe allow it to perform a little bit more better.
And this does get it out of Shock Rock range, because previously after it did 1 attack, you could just Shock Rock it and it was dead. so it does have safety from that now.
Interesting. Yeah, good point. And also, the final card on our balance change here, Coax the Diplomancer. We've seen endless comments about this card in the Discord and in the chat on YouTube and on Twitch about it just being fully OP. So we're going to see a health reduction from 400 to 350, so still substantial. You could argue, look, now it only takes 2 fireballs to kill it instead of 3. But overall, you know, less health is going to be better for dealing with it. And the hypnosis effect, it's only going to be able to hypnotize a minion for up to 10 seconds. So if it's been hypnotizing a minion for 10 seconds, once that's up, the hypnosis will fall off and it will just do its very low attack. Is this a healthy change, you feel? DefShoot, have you felt that Coax was OP?
I'm mostly a 1v1 player, so I haven't seen Coax that much, which is pretty nice for me. In 2v2, I'm positive he's been an absolute menace in 1v1 in pre-mates and in randoms. The hypnosis maximum of the hypnosis max duration, I think that's very good because you could probably use it to your advantage as well. When Coax is on the field, you play something tanky and then just let it stay hypnotized for a bit, and then you play your minion, so then that sort of negates Coax, because once those 10 seconds are up, it's a very weak minion that does around 12, 16, somewhere around their DPS for 6 mana. And with the health change, it's gonna make it to, with a whole bunch of damage barriers, you can kill Coax earlier, like 50 damage minions will now only need 7 attacks instead of 8, or yeah, just things are in that general area, like Cannon Roller only needs 3 hits to kill it, but I think that the card is gained a big nerf. I think that the hypnosis change is more of a healthy nerf that will sometimes affect the card, but for most general usage, it won't change too much in my opinion.
I think it's interesting to read what the devs say about this. They felt like at high ranks, Coax was performing on par with other similar cards of a power level, but at medium and lower ranks, it was far overperforming what it really should have been, which I think it's to do with the fact that you need to know how to play against it. You need to have certain things in your deck to deal with it, and if you don't, then you need to be able to play in a certain way. You need to identify, look, there's a Coax on this lane, let's just abandon that lane for a moment, let it get to face and do nothing, let's push. I think what was probably happening is if you push into it, it can be incredibly strong, and at the medium and lower levels of the game, people were probably making those mistakes. So what they've tried to do here is make it a bit more user friendly for newer players to deal with without destroying the card overall. So again, I think this is something that can still be strong. I'm somewhat surprised they didn't restrict the times that it can be wildcarded, but that's not something that they've done yet. Okay. So those are the changes coming to version 1.29. It's going to be dropping on Thursday, the 21st of October. So we've got the 2 new cards, we've got a new skin, we've got a wealth of balance changes, and of course a bunch of bug fixes as well. As soon as we have access to the blog post for these changes, I will put that information in the description, so you can click on it and go through it at your leisure. Now, if you've got any thoughts or feelings based on the new cards and the balance changes, please take a moment, let us know in the description, in the comments. Let me know what you think about the changes. What are you looking forward to? What are you worried about? And also, if you could take a moment, if you've enjoyed this content, please hit the subscribe button. Looking at the recent stats, about 66% of views are from unsubscribed people. I'd love to have you as a subscriber here in the Fish Tank, and I'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to hit that subscribe button, get that bell on, and interact with some of the videos. Give us some thumbs up if you're enjoying the content. Let us know in the comments what you think about it, if you've got any ideas of what we could do differently or better. And of course, I don't know where I was going with that one. DefShoot, any final words you would like to say on these changes, new cards, balance changes, anything like that?
I'd say that let's see, for the big ones, I think that the Keen Pup one is pretty big, the Master Attack one is pretty big, and I think that both these new cards are going to see good usage. If you look back at past seasons, we've had a lot of weaker, newer cards, but lately we've been getting ones that are strong, which I think is a good thing. I think when you release a new card, it's natural for it to be strong. So I am looking forward to these 2 new cards. I think they'll both be quite playable.
Yep. That's a good point, and yeah, that's definitely, we've seen some cards in the past from battle passes where they come and go, but some of them stick around, and hopefully these will, and it'd be interesting to see them and see how they fit into the meta. Anyway, thanks so much for your time, guys. I know we've rambled on a little bit, but hopefully we did have a lot to cover. We've covered it in depth. Hopefully you appreciate that. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me today, DefShoot. My name's been Bad as Fish 80, and I'll see you guys again here soon in the fish tank. Take care.